Well, the government, of course, with support from Labor, has blocked 5G from being the provider for the next 5G network. They say it's simply too important and have been advised of security risks. 5G is still not giving up, though, releasing, well, they say a claim today that Australians could miss out on 5G in some parts of the country if 5G is not involved. Jeremy Mitchell, Director of Corporate and Public Affairs at Huawei, joins me now for more on this. Your claim today is that 3 million Australians would miss out on 5G if Huawei is excluded. Obviously, you're not the only possible provider, so what's that based on?
Tom, it's actually not our advice. That's from an independent report that we commissioned, though, from Oxford Economics. Now, they're a globally recognised, globally respected firm that says the economic impact...
Commissioned by Huawei, though?
Absolutely, but these people are very well respected and they don't do what we say. They independently put this report together. And what it shows is that up to 3 million Australians are going to miss out on 5G because of the ban on Chinese companies like Huawei. And so obviously this has a big impact mainly on regional and rural Australia.
What's the claim based on, though? Because Huawei's main claim, of course, has been to be able to have good technology at a cheaper cost. Presumably the government has the option of a subsidy so that people don't just miss out.
Well, as the report says, there's a 30% now increase in the costs to people like Telstra, Optus and Vodafone to roll out 5G. The Australian carriers are going to pay $300 million each a year, up to $300 million each a year more than our counterparts in, say, UK and across Europe and across Asia, because Australia has banned companies like Huawei from providing it. Now, the ACCC, for example, has blocked the merger of TPG and Vodafone because they're worried about the lack of competition between the 4 providers of telecommunications in Australia. What we have now is a duopoly in Australia of providing technology to those carriers, and that has an economic consequences. And it means that rural and Australia, rurally, those people who will rely on 5G, and this is the economic reform that will enable smart farming, productivity gains for regional Australia, they're going to miss out on it.
Well, that's saying they will miss out on it. Why is that true? Isn't it a question of cost? The government could choose to subsidise this instead and make it affordable. Look at how much money the government's tipped into NBN. I mean, you're just saying they're going to miss out on it. That needs an asterisk, doesn't it?
Well, I think that's the classic point, that NBN has costed $150 billion and still Moldova has better broadband than we do. 5G is the last opportunity for Australians to get world-class broadband, and NBN has been an absolute failure. I think most people acknowledge that. Those people who use it would acknowledge that, and regional Australia definitely know that.
And so Huawei's not the only company that can deliver world-class broadband, is it?
Well, we are absolutely the best at 5G. We are at 12 months to 18 months ahead of our competitors. That is globally recognised. In fact, the British Prime Minister came out just a few days ago saying that UK citizens deserve the best broadband 5G. And that's why those who don't want Huawei need to make a case of what's the better alternative.
Oh, OK. Well, what the government's obviously weighing up is that and the security risk. It's been well fleshed out, but I'll provide a quote for our viewers, of course. This is from China's intelligence laws, which talk about the state security organ collecting relevant evidence. It says the relevant organisations and individuals shall provide it truthfully and may not refuse. That's what has people... And you say about global recognition, there's also a lot of recognition about the risk of Huawei and the extent with which China might use it.
Well, first of all, we will always abide the rules and laws of the country in which we operate in, and we will not do anything that puts at risk our customers. It would be political and economic suicide for our company to do so. So, for example, in Australia, there is a law that requires us to put in a backdoor or a vulnerability into our products. Now, we would never obviously export any of those products if we were told to do so by the Australian government to put those vulnerabilities in. We would never export them beyond the boundaries of Australia, because we know that would be breaking the laws in the other countries that we're in. So we will always uphold like Chinese law, Australian law, US law, UK law within those boundaries, but we would never do anything that would actually put at risk our customers. But don't take our word for it. We were happy to be independently audited. We are very happy to be monitored, and we're very happy to have all the sort of checks and balances in place to ensure critical infrastructure is safeguarded. And I think
it goes beyond what's happened so far. Just to jump in there, Jeremy, I mean, you've got, for example, the issue of 5G, how important this is to any country, that it isn't either compromised or even just shut down. I'll give you these comments from a Chinese academic who was put up by the Chinese embassy for interview in Australia. So provided by the Chinese embassy, he said, if there is a war between the US, and this was Wang Yiwei, by the way, if there's a war between the US and China over the South China Sea or Taiwan, you, Australia, are the frontier. You are the first sacrifice of that. That's got to be pretty concerning if at that stage we've got Huawei 5G.
Well, with or without Huawei, Australia's 5G is going to be manufactured in China. So Ericsson and Nokia, who are going to be the only two providers of 5G in Australia, both the 5G componentry that they are putting in Australia is manufactured in China at factories half owned by the Chinese government. So if the risk is China, then there is a
But that's not the
vulnerability.
same as building the whole network, is it, Jeremy? They are different things.
Well, we wouldn't be building the whole network. And look, we think trust no one. The one thing we say is everyone should be checked. Everyone should be having independently tested. It's a global supply chain. You are very right, and governments are right all around the world to ensure that the networks are secure. They are very important.
But the supply chain is one thing. That doesn't give any ongoing control in any sense, just because something was manufactured somewhere.
Well, the risk for Huawei is just the same as Ericsson or Nokia because we manufacture similarly in China. And also, don't forget, we don't own the networks. We don't run. You know, Australia's 4G network, the majority of it has been built by Huawei, safely, securely. We've been here for 16 years. We have never had a security issue. And I think, you know, I'm very happy to say, look at our record, but also say, happy to be tested, happy to be audited, happy to be put on.
What about the record of Huawei in relation to the Chinese government and the arrest of Meng Wanzhou? Now, this was over financial fraud, the fraud in the US. Canadian authorities made the arrest. This was strongly condemned by the Australian government as well. The retaliation arrests followed, 2 Canadians arrested. There was also an Australian arrested, which some people thought might be retaliatory as well. What does that say about what China thinks about any country that dares to hold a Huawei official to account?
Look, all we can ask is for Huawei to be judged on Huawei's actions. Yeah, we are an independent company. We're privately owned. We aren't responsible for the actions of the Chinese government. We aren't responsible.
But you also can't stop them taking that action.
Well, I mean, it's a matter for the governments to government. I mean, we just want to get on and give Australians the best technology possible. We understand the bar is higher because of our Chinese heritage. We're happy to meet those requirements. But I think at the moment, everyone gets painted in the one Chinese brush, and therefore we're not being judged by our 30 years history. We're not being judged at what we're sort of saying we're happy to do. And I think that's unfortunate because as this report shows, Australians are going to miss out.
But what I'm talking about is very recent. It's things that happened with Huawei the Chinese government clearly took exception to. It begs the question that if a Huawei executive was accused of wrongdoing in Australia, Australian authorities could be thinking they're entering dicey diplomatic territory merely by perhaps laying financial fraud charges. You can see that possibility, can't you?
Look, if someone breaks the law, then they should be upheld by that law. And as I said, we obviously, for the case of the CFO, we say that she has done nothing wrong, but there is now a court case going through, and we have a trust in the Canadian system, and that will go through the processes, its due process. So that's fine, and then that will happen. But again, we can only be judged on what we do. We are Huawei, independently, privately owned company. We have a 16-year history here in Australia, and we just want to be judged on what we do, what our actions are, and the business that we run.
Jeremy Mitchell, we are out of time. Thanks for your time today.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.